Yo, 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 what's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Nate the Great coming at you with another live. You already know if you're new to the channel, like, share, comment, and subscribe. To all the returning friends and family, you already know it's peace and blessings. Give y'all some time to tune in case these notifications ain't go out. Keith, what's going on, my guy? James, number 8, what's going on? What's going on? First things first, you already know, hopefully everybody having a blessed and productive Monday. Hopefully everybody was able to smoothly get through the work day. Hopefully your kids was able to smoothly get through the school day. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their weekends, their birthday weekends. And if you was able to enjoy yourself and able to still wake up another day, give your praises where it's due. Appreciate everybody that tuned in Wednesday for the conversation. Actually Thursday. Appreciate everybody that tuned in for the previous convo. Definitely was a great one. You know, definitely hit on some key points. And like I said, it's definitely going to be a recap to that one. Those that did miss it, y'all could definitely catch the replay. Hold on. Tonight is going to be a little short, little simple. Just want to give some insight on a few things. I want to speak to some of the parents that need to hear this right now. There's some of you who really need to really instill and teach your kids discipline and self-control. I say that because there's some issues right now with some of these kids are getting hurt right now. You know, and there's things that again are going to cause your children to get hurt or worse. So it's good for y'all to try to teach them self-control. Like prime example, there's some of them who are doing these little pranks, trying to do whatever as far as social media is concerned. I spoke about this a while back, but I feel like I need to speak about it again. There are some things that again a child should not be overdoing it, and a child should definitely learn some respect and also stay in their place. Because I'm telling you this right now, some of you will get upset. Some of you will say that these adults are being the wrong. Tasha, baby. And this the thing though. Again, not saying that you shouldn't be trying to be out there and trying to find your way, whatever it is you don't. But have some respect when it comes to it. Like I said, some of these playing pranks, and some of these people that you're trying to play pranks on are not going to be for the nonsense, especially if they're not part of it at all. They're going to think it's something other than. Like there was one situation where this dude was trying to play a prank, but you playing a prank with somebody's girl at the end of the day. You're approaching them and trying to quote unquote make conversation with them when you know for a fact who they dealing with. That's a little thing right there that could cause a problem as we speak. You already know, sis, you know how we do it. But this is how I'm saying, it's things like that. Now, if you're not prepared or if they're not prepared for any type of tussle or any type of fight, they should fall back from doing some of the pranks that they're doing. Because not to be funny, not saying that pranks ain't funny and that pranks don't cause laughter. But again, it depends on the prank and it depends on if the people are down for the prank. Like you can't just run up on somebody randomly and do something, but then when it starts getting heated, oh, it was a prank, it was a joke, it was a joke. Nah, you gotta chill out because not everybody gonna be in a jokeful mood. You don't know what people could be going through, and you're over here trying to play games. It's the same thing that could get you hurt real badly or even unalive. I can remember a prank that took place in my area a couple summers back. And that dude was lucky he got off with the skin of his teeth because, you know, these people wasn't playing. Like one thing you don't do is grab somebody. Like that's the one thing you don't do. You don't grab somebody. I don't care if you was trying to be funny as far as pull up your pants or doing something along those lines. Because again, you know, you're gonna have others who are probably watching that person or probably cool with that person. If they think something, they're gonna automatically think you in some sort of danger, and then guess what's gonna happen? Now you gotta possibly fight off more than one person. For what? Susanna, baby. James, what's going on, my guy? That's what I'm saying. Teach them some self-discipline and self-respect and self-control. Because again, there's ways to make your content or do whatever it is you're gonna do, even if you are somebody that's into pranks. But again, remember, when people are not part of the prank or when people are not part of the joke, you take a risk. You take a serious risk. So that's something you gotta think about. There was another situation where a dude was, doing his workouts, doing whatever he was supposed to be doing in the gym, and he had somebody come and take his hat off. Now, again, that's one thing you shouldn't do, especially when it comes down to grown men, is violate their space, basically. Because, again, it's not going to end so well. Some people are going to think you're up to no good. Some people are going to think you in for some form of setup. And that's going to be the problem right there. And then now, look, it could get violent. Or it could possibly get worse than violent. Serious, baby. Didi, baby. Again, you have to be careful, especially in this day and age, because you got some people who are doing things for shock value. And the shock value is only going to get you but so far. So you got to think about it. You know, again, you don't know what that person might be going through mentally, or and they might not be in the mood for it. You don't know if that person might have lost their job. You don't know if that person might have lost a family friend or anybody along those lines. You don't know what could be the situation. And you're sitting here playing these pranks on people again that are not part of the prank at all. What you expect to happen? Now I've seen some pranks where people are part of it, and you could tell when it's scripted and when people are part of it. But then there's others where it's really just like, bro, you chose the wrong person or the wrong time to do certain acts. You know. I see prime example with the situation with the boy walking up on this dude girl and just trying to whatever. Now, if he would have felt the type of way, he would have got physically violent in that gym. And who was going to stop him? First things first, you already know that this person is dealing with somebody. It's not like you're not watching them, you know. And then again, putting yourself in all forms of scenarios that ain't going to look good on your behalf, you know. Now, some people will say, "Oh, you're wrong for doing this," and "Oh, they young, you wrong for doing this." No, but they're wrong too, because again, if you don't know these people personally, why play pranks on them? Why do something where somebody could get taken over the edge? It's pointless in doing so. You know. See, the one thing about life that people fail to realize: if you don't learn discipline, if you don't learn respect, self-respect, and structure, the world is going to humble you, and the world is definitely going to teach you a value in that lesson right there. It's going to teach you. Because again, it should be common decency to know, all right, well, I know these people might look like they could be part of this, but then again, let me find out. See, the best thing to do is ask people before you just do shit. Sorry, but it's true. Angela, baby. See, like, even if you want to include somebody in your sketch, your skits, whatever the case is, find out if they are going to be part of it. Find out if they're going to tolerate it before you just do anything. See, the problem is right now, When I was talking about self control, it's like some people are doing the utmost, especially for some form of content or some form of again a come up, a viral moment. See, this right now is what's putting people on the back burner right now. What's getting people hurt or getting people into severe consequences. Again, just wanting to do something for that moment, do something for that clout. It ain't necessary. Again, if you got friends that are down with, doing what's necessary, all right, cool. That's different. You keep involved in them and you keep doing whatever. You know, you want to make yourself notable, yes, but then the same token, you don't want to be notable for getting slapped up, getting beat up, or worse, just because you decide you want to do something to somebody at the wrong time. You know, there's another reason why I said the world is going to teach them respect and discipline is because you have some of them who are blatantly disrespectful. And I mean, as far as their words are concerned, there's nobody that's going to tolerate you just blatantly walking up to them, cursing at them, and getting crazy with them. Fathers, y'all need to teach y'all sons that those three words in particular that they keep trying to use, or these three words that ain't supposed to be said, especially towards another man, is going to get them hurt or worse. And some of y'all should know what those three words are, that SMD. Because I can remember anytime that was said out of a man's mouth, either going towards another man, usually it would be some form of a fight or a duel taking place directly after that. Because there's no way you're going to invite somebody to your Johnson and think somebody ain't going to fight you, or think that somebody ain't going to want to hurt you seriously. Again, teach them self-discipline and control. Because I'm telling you this right now, some of them are only getting off by the skin of their teeth. Why? Because again, you might have some people who are going to be on their side, or you're going to have some people who are going to say, "Oh, you didn't have to do that," or "That was unnecessary." You're going to have some people who are going to be trying to give leeway to it. But guess what? The world will surely teach you about respect and principles. So, there's some of y'all that again need to get it together. Make sure you get your kids right. Your kids deciding this is certain things that they want to do. Guess what? They should do it a certain way where it doesn't involve anybody getting hurt, no police reports being filled out, so on and so forth. See, like some of these people have learned the hard way for doing just anything for shock value. There was one dude a couple years back, he was going in certain gas stations and certain stores, and he was grabbing up coffee machines and doing all sorts of other wild stuff, causing damage within the store. Guess what? That shit got him a little bit of jail time and a ticket. Because again, at some points, some of these establishments, they're not going to tolerate too much of the disrespect. They're not going to tolerate people just doing what the hell they want to do. And again, you got to give verbal consent and permission to do certain things anyway. But again, the token of disrespect for some of these people, it got to be checked. Because again, if you could tell somebody, oh, that's just like prime example. If a person wasn't a part of this prank that you're trying to do, and now they're extremely upset, how are you getting upset with them or trying to get mad at them because they're upset? You should have thought about that before you got that far in that deep end. I've seen some situations where these young ones is getting slapped up, like how a parent would slap up their child if their child was verbally disrespectful or out of pocket. And then some people are saying, "Oh, well, they shouldn't have did that," or "These people know better." Nah, it's not about that at all. It's about respect. Prime example: some people will walk away. Some people will definitely, brush it off. But you're gonna have others again. They not gonna be not gonna be that not gonna be willing to do that again, especially if you don't know what the hell they're going through. You know, like I said, it's a lot of these young ones right now, and then you got some of the adults too ain't making it no better because again they watching everything that y'all doing. Like I said, it's some of y'all adults being disrespectful and even getting crazy out your mouth with the elders. Like I said, it seems like it's a generational ladder of certain things that are happening that shouldn't be happening. Respect should be all around the board. The old should be respected. The young should be respecting the old. Anybody that's in the middle supposed to uphold that main message of, again, respect and dignity and honor. And again, I know there's some people who weren't taught that, but at some point you will want to learn that and get ahead of it before it becomes a problem. Over this weekend, seen a couple situations where it could have turned bad. And again, some of you parents, get your children, teach them again, teach them about respect. Teach them that is disrespectful to, again, invite another man or even a woman to your private parts. Shit is not cool, because once you do that, you're already crossing the boundary that there's no coming back from. Teach them that, again, that they need to be a little bit more wise in their decisions that they make. Because if you don't, I kid you not, you're going to continuously have problems. But this is why it's important to instill and teach this shit when they're young. For those that just tuned in, make sure y'all hit that like button. Geraldine, baby. And again, this is things that should be taught from when they're young. When you're not batting in and teaching and instilling, again, the things that are necessary for their character build and growth, they ain't gonna never grow up mentally. And see, in my opinion, being disrespectful to that level is still a form of immaturity, at least in my book. Again, it's amazing how some of these people will cry and bitch about wanting to be respected so badly, but won't show the bit ounce of respect at all. Give me 1 second. Like, again, this weekend was almost 2 fights out here, you know, and this is with younger folks getting crazy with some of the older folks. See, and this is what I'm saying. The SMDs, the eat my balls, and all that other stuff that they've been saying, especially towards older folks, is out of pocket and ridiculous now. Those 3 words right now to this day are still getting people shot as we spoke, or unalive, because again, you can't say that to just anybody. Again, you don't know where their mindset is at. You don't know what they could be going through. And for all you know, that would be your downfall right there. So here, what's going on? Going on, my guy? Again, encouraging all the wrong forms of disrespect and disrespectful behavior is only going to put your kid in the bottom of the percentile. It's going to put them at the bottom of the barrel. Because again, you're going to have some folks, again, that just, they not for it. You say something out of pocket and crazy, especially if they from that old school. Oh, they're going to teach you a lesson. They're going to teach you a valuable lesson. And here it is. You'll have some people that say, oh, you can't say this to my child. Who are you to try to correct my child? Well, if you're not going to correct them, guess what? The world will correct them. I've seen this coming up even in my heydays. You had some people who was blatantly disrespectful, or blatantly say and do the utmost things, right? And then the world surprisingly had a way to humble their asses. And then they learned something over that course of time. You can't just say anything to anybody and think it ain't going to be some form of consequence or repercussion. You can't do something evil or do something disrespectful to somebody and think that it's not going to come back to you. And that's the problem. Like I said, now, we're not teaching the generational value of respect. Prime example, there's some people who are being blatantly disrespectful. If you know somebody is with a woman, I don't care how bad she might be dressed, I don't care how bad she may be, show some respect, not just for them, but show respect for yourself. Find your own if you think you gonna try to push up on something. And again, certain things play hand to hand. You know, like prime example, if this person, if this person is definitely a good one, um, leave all well enough alone. Because again, when it's all said and done, it's gonna look bad on you. Like prime example, another thing I seen this weekend was even down to some of the younger folks seeing some of the things some older folks is doing, and then they following that same situation. Again, have respect for those who are in current relationships or marriages. Um, being disrespectful and out of pocket, especially towards another man's wife, that's a no-no. And that's exactly what could have led to a serious altercation, like I said, this past weekend. You had these young kids trying to be funny, trying to just act like children to a degree, being immature minded, saying and doing whatever towards grown-ups. You took that right adult to check their asses. Now they was trying to talk all tough. Oh, we jump you old nigga and we yada yada yada. And the minute that man did whatever he did, I don't know what he did, but he kindly shut them the hell up. And they kindly kept it moving. See, right there in that situation, that could have been bad. Why? Because I don't know what that man had. But for all you know, those ones that was sitting there talking crazy would have been either in the hospital or in the early grave. And for what? Because you decided to be immature and just be disrespectful at the wrong times. Slim Shell, baby, what's going on? Welcome in, welcome in. Again, y'all got to teach them. The things that they're doing now, the things that they might be seeing and think that is cool, it ain't cool. It's getting people severely hurt. It's getting people sucking up out this earth earlier than expected. It's like, at what point do you sit down with them and let them know, like, listen, this can't continue? It's the same way like in school, because there's some of y'all who got kids in school that are being disrespectful towards the teachers, being disrespectful towards authority. Even when authority is not doing anything as far as distracting them or disturbing them, or they're not doing nothing in particular that they should be getting disrespectful with them about. You got to think about it. At the end of the day, like prime example, for some of them, they don't have to be there, but they choose to be there because, again, they want to see some of y'all actually get past the goal line of graduation. Like prime example, in some scenarios, some of these schools are going back to what they was doing before. No electronics of any sort in the classroom because of the distraction. And 9 out of 10, you ain't getting it back until either a parent come or until the end of the year. So, like I said, it's good. You know, appreciate you, sis. Appreciate you for sharing me out. Appreciate you for dropping those links, serious baby. Working hard in these damn security cameras, baby. I think my shit just lagged on me. Just a little bit, y'all. Y'all already know plantation as always. But again, it's sad though. Like I said, this weekend it could have been a real horror story, you know. And then the first thing some of these adults would have said was, "Oh well, this person should have had enough common sense to not do this," or "This person know they young, why they know?" But it goes both ways. The same way they looking for and seeking respect, they got to give it back. It's earned. It's not given. It's earned. But you need to give that respect when supposed to. Because again, there's some of y'all that's just too unfiltered. Some of y'all, your kids is out here too unfiltered. They saying whatever and doing whatever, and nobody's checking them. And when nobody is checking or correcting these situations, what you think going to happen? It's going to be a complete crash out at some point. You know, now that'd have been the first thing. The minute that man would have decided to do something because he was defending his wife's honor, now it would have been, oh, I'm going to get my mom, I'm going to get my uncle, I'm going to get whoever. You shouldn't have to go get nobody. Stop putting yourself. I would tell these young ones, like I would tell some of these women, stop putting yourself into a position where you have to get somebody else to help you or defend you. That's why I said it's important to teach them these skills and teach them these life lessons early before they start getting of a certain age. Because once they hit a certain age, if they still allowing certain things to happen, guess what? When you do decide you finally want to check something, they ain't going to listen to that shit. They not. That's like you cursing around your child 24/7, and now your child has gotten to the age of cursing. Your child has gotten to a point where they doing the same thing you doing. You can't check nothing again if you wasn't checking it to begin with. You know, and then some of them that are trying to buck up to the older folks as well too. Like, you know, like I had a situation a year or two ago. Had some young kids that I caught. They hopped the fence on my job and got in on the property. Now, I scared the hell out of them because, you know, here it is. They thinking that they're alone, but there's cameras all over on them. So as I said what I needed to say, here it is. Oh, and I'm gonna say something to some of you sorry to put it this way, some of you white folks. Y'all definitely need to teach your children, sons and daughters, about respect. Be respectful and be wise in what they say and how they say it and when they say it, because it's going to get their asses hurt too. Sure enough, they said the OFUN word. Okay, well, I know one of your parents, so don't be surprised when this N word comes knocking at your door. And sure enough, one of them, I did know their parent. So when I knocked on that door and they got the shock of their life, oh shit, yeah, you're not going to be running your mouth and saying what you want to say and thinking somebody's not going to check you. You know, like I said, know the parent well. So I got to tell them, you better get your child in order. I don't care what you got to do, but you need to start doing it now, because your child is going to put themselves in a situation where they're going to get themselves hurt or possibly locked up. Or if not either or, they ain't going to be here breathing. Yeah. But, you know, like I said, I don't make certain things out of nothing. You know, like I said, young and dumbs. I've been young and dumb myself too, to a degree, but it was certain things I wouldn't do because, again, one thing I was taught, even from being from that single parent situation, was respect. So, you know, there's some things I'm just not going to say or do, especially in a certain crowd, because I already know what it entails with that. You know, and it's funny. You know, like I said, ever since that situation, I see the boy still and everything. Properly respect. Hey, how you doing? Sorry about the last time. He kept apologizing. So I'm assuming that his mom's gotten his ass about that. Yeah. I said, you want to tell her what you said or should I tell her? And he told her exactly what was said. And she was like, I'm glad you came to me and said something, because come on now, you know, this is one thing I'm not teaching my children, is how to be ignorant and also just living a certain life. I'm trying to teach my child morals and respect as well. You know, and I respect the parents who are working, again, whether they coming from single parent households or both parents. And I respect them who are actually taking the time out to do what's necessary. You know, this is the problem now. Like I said, there's some of y'all who are just not making sure your children are doing the right things, or at least getting into the right type of activities. Some of y'all allowing your children to run with any and everybody. And then again, this is how they getting set up for the long haul. You know, your child is running around with a select group. That group is probably out here robbing, stealing, or doing whatever. And you ain't checking that. Guess what? When your child get wrapped up with that same group, what happens if you can't bail them out? What happens if they decide there is no bail? You're part of a serious crime and you're not going nowhere. These are things you need to think about. Again, keep close eyes on the company that your children have. Now, if your children are doing right in the house, but then when they get outside, they doing all sorts of fuckery. Again, that's why it's good to have watchful eyes to make sure that that's not happening. Like I said, I can understand for some, y'all probably working crazy hours. You got to deal with enough in a stressful day and then got to come home and try to make sure everything is everything. I get all of that. But in the same token, you should have watchful eyes out on your children, like I said. Come on, baby. Be safe on that road, baby. But it's sad again that in this day and age, you know, some people are dropping the ball worse than ever. Again, you need to make sure that your children are learning self value, self control, and self respect, especially if they plan on building and growing sometime in the future. Again, there's nobody who's going to be around somebody who's blatantly being disrespectful. That's just not going to happen. And prime example, you would want to watch yourself because I've seen situations where there's some people who mess themselves out of getting a job or two just because of being disrespectful. You never know again who you might be coming across. The person you disrespecting or the person you giving so much hell to could possibly be your future employer. What you think gonna happen? These are things you need to take into consideration. And I think that's the problem that we see now. Again, not being careful and being eerie of your situations, and your surroundings. And I'm not making it an issue. I'm just keeping it real right now. And this is for everybody that really needs to hear this now. It's about time that some of y'all really get your kids in order. Your kids shouldn't be the one that's running the household, basically. I was also saying something about some of y'all right now. You know, school is back in session for everybody, basically, right now. In the city, we just went back to school, what, not even 2 weeks ago? Some of you parents got to get together because there should be no reason why your children's 12, 13, 14 years old still out and about past 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I happen to see that sometimes, especially at work. And that's a scary situation because, again, anything could be happening. Just because it might be quiet in some areas, that don't mean it's quiet everywhere. You know, like prime example. Some of y'all remember them old commercials. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? That was a true statement right there. Why? Because again, at a certain time frame, yes, even during the school year, your children should be at home or should be somewhere safe indoors. There's nothing good about being out in these streets all hours of the night, man. None. You know, and seeing this the problem now again. Kids wanting to be grown before they time. I can remember a couple years back, somebody got taken out just because of those 3 words I was just telling y'all earlier. Said that to the wrong individual. That person came back and let them have it. The sad part about it was, that one was expecting a child. So that person never got a chance to even watch their child be born or watch their child grow. See, this is the one thing again why I say it's important for fathers to be a part of the households, no matter what the situation is with the baby mothers, ex-wives, whatever it is. And ladies, it's about time for y'all to start letting these men, especially if these men are willing to do what's necessary, be a part and be a very focal part of the children's growth. You know, some people would try to say, "Oh, I could raise them all by myself." And yes, there have been some people who have raised children by themselves, whether single mothers or single fathers. And I applaud you because the job is not easy. But in my overall experience from what I've seen, it's best to have both households. Wanda, baby. It's best to have both in the household because again, you're getting the equal balance. You know, yes, the mothers are going to be nurturing. The mothers are going to be how they are. You know, they're going to be kind and compassionate to certain things, whereas the father is going to show a different form of love, but it's still love being shown. You know, yeah, we're going to be disciplinaries. We also going to be teachers. We're going to be instructors. Because again, you got to instruct them, you know, so they can start doing right. Because what sense does it make for you to have children if you're not going to teach your children the basic values of life, the basic values of self-respect, control? You know, self-control is definitely something you need to teach them because some of these people are making, irrash decisions just off of impulse. You know, you gotta teach them that when it's all said and done, you know, you have to be able to conduct yourself in a proper way. There are going to be some people who test the waters, but if it's nothing the way you necessarily have to defend yourself or you don't necessarily have to use violence, then again, teach them that there's ways to get around certain scenarios and situations. Now, see, prime example, what I was just saying earlier. When that boy said what he said to me, right? That's why I pay attention and observe certain things. I did know that boy parent. Like I said, went to school with the parent and all. Knew exactly where to go to because that person was still there. You know, like I said, when that boy opened that door and seen that I was sitting there, and when the mother just came, hey, what's going on? I haven't seen you in. I was like, yeah, I need to speak to you about something. Is this your child or is this your niece? Man, mean to say it like that. But I was this your niece, nephew, who? Like, let me know because we got a problem. You know, and that's what I'm saying. It takes that a lot of times. Adults being adults, and especially if you know these children or you know they parents, shouldn't matter. Get these children in order before it becomes a real severe issue. Again, teach them that when they out and about, even if they with the friends, right? Make sure that they being respectful. Make sure that they keeping themselves preserved as possible. If you're not teaching your kids how to steal, right, then make sure they're not hanging around a bunch of thieves. You teaching them self values. You teaching them not to be out there being a bully or out there robbing and hurting their people. Make sure you're not around people who are doing that. Because again, peer pressure is something that can't be overlooked either. They could get peer pressure all around the board, and it's not just from the people that they hanging with. It's the things that they see. Like prime example, some of y'all need to learn self control. Some of you adults, learn self control. Learn when not to do things around children. Learn when to do what you're gonna do. Like I said, there's a time and a place for everything. Y'all can remember a while back I was saying how it was a couple of these women who I know for a fact is probably in their 40s should have enough common sense to not do certain things like a child would be doing, but yet and still they was doing it. So how you expect some of these young ones, especially these young queens out here, to show y'all some respect, give y'all some respect when you're not respecting yourself? That's something that y'all should think about. That's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. It's sad because, like I said, you were sitting here doing all of this twerking and doing everything else, but in the same token, you were not paying attention to what's being done right now. They start seeing y'all adults do certain things, especially out in the streets like that. What you think they gonna start doing? They following right behind y'all. So I said it's important. Definitely need both in the household. And even if you don't have a two-parent household, your parents should be stern enough and strong enough to correct certain things when need be. And I think that's becoming a real severe downfall right now. That's why I said it's important for some of y'all to put y'all personal feelings aside when there's children involved. I don't care if you can't stand that person. You decided to lay down and create a child with this person. So y'all got to put whatever bullshit to the side and get in control of the situation at hand. See, in some scenarios, you know what the problem is. The problem is, like I said before, there's some of y'all who are using your kids as pawns. You don't want these fathers to be a part of these children's lives, but guess what? You are kind of already messing with their mental, and you are taking a stab at something that is going to backfire in the long run. And there's some of y'all who are playing a dangerous game too, as well. I'm not gonna lie to you. Now, again, this is where I stand on it. You know, be real with yourself and also be real with your offspring. That's the best thing you could do. And there's some of y'all who are playing a dangerous game when, again, you're not being true to yourself and being true to your child. Now, I'm looking at it from this standpoint. Um, there's some that are using your kids as pawns. Again, you don't want the father to be involved. You don't want them to see nor be around if they ain't doing something for you. Again, get your personal issues and differences out the damn way. And again, appreciate you for dropping those links, serious baby. She's working harder than this damn Wi-Fi on the computer, baby. Again, teach them that there are some things that will have a consequence. Teach them, prime example, not to make the same mistakes. There's some of y'all right now who, believe it or not, you're doing more damage to your child than you think. Some of y'all sit here and lie and say that the fathers are no good, fathers done passed on. But there's some of y'all who don't know who the hell your child's father is. And that's another thing that could cause a rift between between the parent and the child. Again, imagine being in a situation where you don't know who your father is, or in some cases, you don't know who your mother is. See, again, it's called being wise and being respectable to yourself. So you don't put yourself in a scenario where you might have to take on these responsibilities on your own. And I'm sorry, but it's time for some of these scenarios to really change now and change for the better. I would advise some of you men out there to, again, be careful in what you're doing. Stop getting caught up in the moment. Stop getting caught up in that lust factor. And for some of you women, it's the same thing. Stop getting caught up because there's some of y'all who will cry and bitch and mope about this person ain't good or this person ain't shit, but you decide to lay down with them. So obviously there had to be something for you to go that far with them. Again, some people are going to make mistakes, grant that. But it's about learning from that mistake and learning not to make that same mistake again. That's the same things y'all need to get your kids in order with. Yeah, they're going to make mistakes, but there are going to be some mistakes that are going to be gravely and costly towards them. So again, teach them something better. Again, teach them that it is not right to be disrespectful toward adults, especially adults that actually are trying to help them out in more than one scenario. Like I was saying before, there should be no reason why there's some of them who are being blatantly disrespectful, especially towards teachers who look like they're already in their elder years or look like they are past the age of 50 and 60. Come on now. If we'd have thought to be disrespectful and out of pocket to a degree, especially us coming up back in the day, we'd have been suffering twice as much. We'd have got the ass whooped, not just by the adult we disrespected. We got our ass whooped by the damn parents as soon as we got home. That's the sad part about it again. You know, again, we not teaching the core values that need to be taught. You know, like prime example, I seen a situation where young folks was getting blatantly disrespectful with one dude, and then at one point, one of the little ones, I think they spit on him. They did something to him because that man went crazy and damn near almost hurt every last one of them. Now, yeah, he might have been outnumbered, but then again, that man was strapped. That man looked like he didn't care. If he felt he was going to have to do whatever for his survival, he would have did it. And again, your child would have been placed in that form of danger that they can't get themselves out of. That's why I feel some of y'all need to start having watchful eyes in your community and everywhere that needs to be a watchful eye. Because again, I don't care how hard you're working, I don't care how much time you're going to be working. You still need to have watchful eyes on your children at all times to make sure they're not getting into things that could possibly hurt them in the long run. See, like I said one time before, what we had as a strong community has slowly but surely been crumbling. Because now we have adults now who don't care. Just like we got young ones right now who don't care. Again, it's a repeated cycle. Monkey see, monkey do. If we see these adults that are supposed to be adults doing little kid shit like this, why would they want to do anything else? Why would they want to follow a good path when they watching all of y'all do the wrong shit? For real. You know? It's time to come to this conclusion now. Because again, what's gonna happen? You know? What's gonna happen when your child decides to go out on a certain day and do something drastic just because they running with the wrong people? What's gonna happen when your child ends up getting into a scenario where you can't help them out? What happens if your child ends up spending a part of their youth locked up, like I was saying the other day in this live? What happens? What's gonna happen? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's right for them to be in that position? Again, imagine your child being 14, getting wrapped up in the wrong type of things, and then now guess what? Your child is possibly doing 10 to 15 years. Now, even though they'll still be young when they get out of jail, guess what? It doesn't matter. They will have missed a portion of their life. So, which means whatever they not privy to, whatever they don't know what's going on in the real world, they'll find out when they get out. And do you think they're going to be able to really adapt to what they missed in life? No. Now, there are some scenarios where we've seen wrongful convictions and we've seen some people who are just now coming home after a lot of these wrongful convictions have been overturned. Your child could be a part of that situation. Being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and your child can mess around and get pinned for a crime they didn't do. So again, you gotta watch everything. Watch the company they keep, watch their overall surroundings, But also, in some situations, record themselves for their own safety. You see why some people are trying to get upset about, oh, you can't record this and you can't do this and you can't do that. No, in some instances, people are recording for their safety because you got some weird stuff going on right now. You got some wild stuff going on right now. Your safety, again, is supposed to be the number one overall factor. And that's what a lot of you parents are not teaching your children, how to be safe. And the ones who are teaching their children how to be safe, that's because it's a consistent on a daily. What do you do in this scenario in case this happens? You know, trying to prepare them. Because yeah, in some scenarios, you're not going to be prepared or you're not going to expect certain things to happen. But you should automatically have an insight on how to deal with it just in case if it does happen. Yeah, in some scenarios, you're not going to be able to prepare for the unexpected. And again, that would be a catalyst to a bigger problem. Prime example. Like I said earlier, you got some of these young boys and these young ones, and even these young adults with that SMD. But we also got some of these young women out here with the eat my cooch and all that other shit. And again, being crazy and out of pocket and disrespectful with your mouth is going to get you checked. The world has a real strange way of humbling people and putting people back in some form of place. So if you're allowing your children to be out here doing whatever and you ain't checking anything, and I mean anything, don't expect too much from your child. And when you do expect it, it's going to be well past that time. They're going to have to learn a hard lesson out and about that they shouldn't have to learn. I think it's about time for, again, instilling values. See, like I said, I know it's going to be times when you don't want to hear this conversation, but it's times that you're going to have to hear it. You're going to have to bring it to the forefront again. Teach them the lessons that need to be taught. Prime example, if you are out here committing certain crimes, it doesn't matter if it's a petty crime or something serious. A crime is a crime. And at some point, they're going to get tired of seeing you back and forth. That's another thing. Try to keep these people out of jail. Keep these young ones out of jail. See, I'll be honest with you. With some of you adults that haven't learned yet, especially those who have family, who have children, if you keep putting yourself in situations where they got to put you in restraints, where they got to put you behind a damn wall, you are tearing the fabric of your family structure apart little by little, whether you believe it or not. You are. You don't think that some of these children have seen their parents getting hauled off, getting taken off to prison for doing something that's not necessary? You don't think that it messes up their overall mental space? Now, some people have made a mistake. They learned from it when they got home, especially they still had time to be with their kids and still be a part of their kids' growth and natural growth. Guess what? They ain't never take their asses back. Want to know why? Because they already realized I can't miss out on my children growing up healthy, my children growing up with respect, manners. I can't see my children being out here and I can't, defend my family the way I'm supposed to. Now, if some of y'all would learn to keep certain things under wraps, you know, it could start something. It could start a little piece of a revolution. But some of you parents need to teach your kids that things that they're doing that have grave consequences. Once you cross a certain line, there is no coming back. Prime example, if your child was a part of a situation where somebody got unalived, even if your child didn't do the initial act, doesn't matter. That right there could cause traumatic experiences. That right there could put them in a situation that they're not prepared for. You could be an accessory to a crime and still get just as much time as the person that did the act. That's things y'all not teaching them. That's things that you should be really aware of. You know, I'm sorry, but right now is the perfect time again to really start doing what's necessary. You know, if you claim you love the kids, okay, well, teach the kids better, show them better. My bad, y'all. You know, but again, I think that it really is important to do that. Again, like for some of these young queens out here, they having this masculine energy being around the wrong folks, right? Again, their words are being just as disrespectful. And that's going to be a problem for some of them. See, again, you have to establish ground rules. You have to definitely establish strength and willpower, but again, self-control and self-discipline. Because it be your kid's luck. Your kid decide to say something to the wrong person, and that person decide, I'm not going to tolerate that. Now you could take this with you and go get who you're going to get. And then what? So now it's going to be even a bigger problem. Why? Because again, you didn't get in control of the situation before it got out of hand. Another thing I'm starting to see too, and I've seen that this has happened on a few different occasions, there's some of you adults who are not respecting each other. And again, when there are kids around or kids involved and they see that y'all moving just as bad, if not worse than them, how we gonna break that cycle? You know? Another thing I would say again for some of y'all is make sure your children is not being involved in certain conversations and certain acts. Because again, it's those certain behaviors and those certain acts that will have them doing something that they shouldn't be doing at all. And you can't overlook that for nothing. You can't. You know, there's a way to deal with certain situations when again, there's no need to be violent. You know, gotta teach them that even when you having a disagreement with somebody, it doesn't necessarily have to take a evil turn. It doesn't have to go left all the way. Lara, what's going on? Royal baby, what's going on, sis? You know, this is important right now. Because again, you know, we have a problem. You know, it's bad enough that judicial system is kind of messed up on certain angles. But in the same token, you know, if you're not trying to instill the right values in your children, they're gonna be right a part of that same judicial system. They're gonna be right a part of that same lockup. If you don't want to see your child become another number or become state property, you gotta have all the talks that you need to have with them. You know, that's what I'm saying. You know, it's not hard to really sit down and have a discussion. See, the problem is, like I said, you got some who want to be friends with their kids so badly that they're allowing them to do whatever. Like prime example, I had to get one person I know personally had to get their child in order one day. Came to come check them, hang out for a bit. You know, here it is. You're trying to have an adult conversation and trying to keep them about food and decide to be disrespectful. Oh, well, why I gotta go here and why I gotta do this? And oh, this is my house too. It's your house. But in the same token, if your mother just asked you to do something, you should respect that. I told my son that what if your father was sitting in this living room right now and he would have heard you talking to your moms the way you just talked to her? You think you'd be sitting here right now? You'd probably be somewhere crying. That's why I said it's important for fathers to really be a part of the traditional growth when need be. Sorry, but it's time for that. You know, it's time for y'all to show what it really is. You know, so I'm saying you gotta have this. You gotta have this talk, man. When you not having these talks, you putting yourself in grave danger. Putting your children in grave danger, whether you want to hear it or not. So I'm sorry. You know, as much as you hate to hear it, it's truth. You know, there are things that you do right now that will impact them. And it will impact them either in a positive manner or a negative manner. The choice is up to you, though. But if you choose not to do anything, oh, trust me, you're going to be in a world full of hurt. And when that reality set in, it's only going to be so much you can do. You know, like I said, you don't want your children being a part of, you don't want them to be a part of that judicial system and on the wrong note. Better start checking them. I honestly believe some of y'all again should start going back to the old ways and the old methods. The kids should have a damn curfew. If they're not old enough to have a job, if they ain't old enough to buy a pack of cigarettes, they not old enough to go to the liquor store, anything along those lines, they should be in the crib at a certain time frame regardless. That's another thing that I've seen recently. You know, it's crazy. Again, all hours of the night. And then if something bad happens to their asses or they end up getting into something bad, what's going to be the problem? What's going to be the way to fix that problem? I knew some kids when I grew up that never made it home because they wanted to be out and about. One kid I knew for a fact not being where they were supposed to be at, was supposed to be home going to school the next day, decides to leave out their house, go hang with the wrong crowd. That wrong crowd turned around and let him get hit by a whole truck. That truck dragged him for 2 blocks. That boy lost his life. Who knows what that boy could have been? Keith, what's going on, my guy? See you up in here. That's what I'm saying. Got to get back to that. You know. Again, make sure your children are safe. But there's a lot of y'all who are not doing that. And again, a lot of y'all are going through the pain and the suffering. You shouldn't have to learn that hard of a lesson. You shouldn't have to lose your child or almost lose your child to the way of the streets or the way of the world because you're not trying to do what's necessary. I knew another one who out and about in the streets was supposed to been home, supposed to been going to visit grandparents for a weekend or whatever the case is. Parents had everything planned and the plans got ruined. Why? Because they child being outside with the wrong people, being outside late when they should have been in the house, got caught in the midst of all out shooting. Straight bullet hit, pierced the artery and all of that. Nobody was around to save that boy. These are the type of stories that you come across. In some scenarios, you're not going to get that because the crime and the violence is not as bad. But in the urban areas where you know for a fact there's always something, y'all should want to keep your children safe. Geo, baby. Nah, that's a whole fact, James. That's exactly how they would be doing it. They would be wondering, how did this happen? And that's always the questions. The minute something happens to somebody's child is, well, how did this happen? Or where did I go wrong? You went wrong by not paying attention to your children. Again, you went wrong by not setting certain ground rules. And again, people are going to make mistakes. But when you get into adulthood, there should be no mistakes. There should be no second guessing. There should definitely be, again, ground rules set. Because again, your children are not grown. Your children are not old enough to pay bills. Your children are not even old enough to get their own apartments. So how is it possible that these children are out all hours of the night and you're not making sure that they home? Especially during the school year. Like the other night, it's 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I had a group of kids on scooters. And again, group of kids. These wasn't no teenagers. These was kids. Like not even 10, 11 years old. Kids. Why are they still out in the battle hours of the night? Where are your parents at? Why are your parents not being involved? Chrissy, baby. Kalani, what's going on, my guy? I gotta wrench your ass back up. I thought I had you wrenched up. Appreciate you, my guy. Appreciate everybody that tuned in. If y'all ain't hit that like button, please make sure y'all hit that like button. I also noticed one thing. This is one reason why in some situations people are not hitting the algorithm, because nobody's hitting them like buttons. You're coming in, you're watching, you're being a part of, but you're not hitting that like button. That is important on all angles, especially if you want these good messages to get out. But again, I appreciate everybody that tuned in and rocking out right now. The link is pinned in case anybody want to chime in on this convo at some point. But again, I still feel like this. We have to start changing and getting back to our core values of things. Again, got to be structure built. You have to build structure when you are bringing children into the world. And if you ain't got no children, but you're adopting children, you're adopting nieces, nephews, or you're just adopting random children out of nowhere, you still are going to have to be a protector, number one, and a teacher, number two. You have to protect everything. You know, how do you protect your family? Simple. You protect your family by doing everything necessary to keep your children out of harm's way. Yeah, they're going to learn certain things in life, like all of us have coming up from early stages to preteens to teens, even into adulthood. Yes, life is going to be an experience. Life is always going to be a learning experience, especially for those young ones coming up. But again, teaching them the right things, instilling the right things will help with that. You know, it's very important again for y'all to start sitting down and even having these uncomfortable talks. Like prime example, there's some of y'all who are not having the talk with the birds and the bees when it comes down to your children. When your children get a certain age, yeah, you're gonna have to have that talk with them. As comfortable as it could be, you have to have that talk with them, because you don't want to be in a situation where your teenager is talking about, I could be expecting a child. So again, these are things you have to be area of. See, like I said the other day, it didn't make sense that all these kids is on scooters. None of them look over the age of 10 or 11. And it's after 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't they got school the next day? Ain't they supposed to be indoors trying to get some rest, knowing that they might have to travel to go to school? Some of these kids are not fortunate enough to get the school bus treatment. So some of them are going to have to travel either by bus or by train. And this is how I feel. In some instances, some of y'all should still be taking your kids to school. Why? Because again, at least you know your child made it there safe. See, I know parents right now that if they fortunate enough to have their kids on the school bus, yeah, you know they're going to get to school because they're on the bus. They're with a chaperone adult. So they're going to get there. But there's some who ain't fortunate. And if you have to travel, if they have to travel, then guess what? You need to be traveling with them to make sure they get there safe, make sure everything is copacetic while you bringing them inside the school. And shoot, once everything is where you feel it should be at, then you leave. If you got to work and do what you got to do, cool. It's good to sit down and have these proper talks and discussions with your children. This is how they learn how to be better people. This is how they learn to use their mind. You know, you have to show them the blueprints. You know, you have to. Letting your kids walk into a situation blind, they could mess around and get snatched up. Also, some of y'all need to start paying attention and making sure all your children are home. Because this is another reason why some of these young ones are getting wrapped up. Don't act like we still don't have a situation where there's smuggling and sex trafficking going on. Because that's still something that still lingers around from state to state, worldwide. Again, you got to think about how many kids got snatched up because they wasn't being properly taken care of or they wasn't properly being watched. I just heard about a situation that happened all the way in California with um, they wrapped up, and I'll also speak about some of these situations when it comes down to the gangs, because I feel that's another thing that's becoming a part of the genocide. You know, um, it was a situation where some gang members got wrapped up for doing what? Sex trafficking minors. On top of that, these minors who are supposed to be guarded, being protected by parents or grandparents or family alone, are out there in the streets running wild, doing grown up things they shouldn't be getting into, putting themselves out there when they shouldn't. Shouldn't no minor be out there selling themselves just to try to make ends meet. No child should be out there selling themselves because they can't fend for themselves. This is a problem, like I said before. You know, the things that you have to be eerie about. Hence why I said some of y'all have to start making sure your children are home. Like prime example, it's 9:42 on the East Coast right now. How much you want to bet? Despite that, it's kind of quiet out. How much you want to bet at some point, someplace, you're gonna have a group of kids being outside when they shouldn't be outside. They should be home, either finishing up homework or getting themselves prepared for the following day. See, again, when some of y'all want to live y'all second childhood and y'all deciding y'all just want to be out there doing whatever, don't act like there won't be grave consequences. That grave consequence is going to be your family structure being ripped apart little by little. Now, again, for some parents, this should be a life lesson and this should be an eye opener. Again, these people just got caught up in a RICO case. Make sure your children ain't out and about being with the wrong people who are putting themselves a part of these gang sets and everything else. See, again, when you got children who think that they're grown and think that they can handle everything, and when life really comes crashing down on them, who can they run to? Who can they turn to? In some instances, they have nobody to turn to. It shouldn't take for you to lose your child to the streets or to the penal system for you to realize, damn, I got to do better. I got to shapen up. I don't want this same thing to happen. You know, right now, prime example, when kids should be in the house, I can guarantee you there's kids out and about, even with their parents. And then again, what's out in the streets after a certain time? Nothing. You know, nothing but grave danger. Like I said, some of y'all, you want to have your children out. Prime example, I asked that the other day. When is a proper time to bring your children home, especially when your children are still toddlers, still young babies? You know, child shouldn't be out past 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry, I'm old fashioned like that because it couldn't have been me, couldn't have been my mom's. Like I said, unless we coming back from some form of event where we was out of town and we just now getting back into our area, that was a whole different story. And even then, there was eyes and ears open for every little thing. Right now, prime example is probably a parent out or two parents out and about right now trying to live their second childhood and got their kids out and about running crazy. Again, things can happen in the nighttime. There are still random shootouts, fights. You know, a natural disaster could happen, or even a disaster period could happen. You know, and this is where again it could get critical. I can most likely guarantee you in the next hour or so, I'll hear some kids running around and moving around. I'm at work now, so I could already imagine again. How do you expect these kids to learn anything, do anything better with themselves when you're not trying to teach them anything? You're not trying to, again, force what needs to be forced. I'm sorry, in some instances, you're going to have to force it. You know, in order for them to learn, you have to continuously bat it into their head that some of the decisions that they make will have severe consequences. Again, if you're deciding to be out with a group of folks who love to rob and steal, and you're being a part of it, even if you're just a lookout, guess what? You're still a part of a crime. You can still end up getting wrapped up. You can still end up spending the night, if not a couple nights in jail, juvenile. Not even worth it, you know? No doubt, no doubt, Keith. Don't get your ass in trouble at work, bro. I already know. I already know. This is why I gotta keep having these talks. Gotta keep, instilling that form of information out. And again, it's critical that some of y'all really start doing what's necessary because children are going to be the ones suffering in the long run. Yeah, you're going to suffer a big portion too, but they're going to suffer just as bad, if not worse. You know. So again, it's important for y'all to, really create that bond and create that structure when needed. I think it's important. You know, again, you don't want to be in a situation where you're wondering why and what happened, and that's why I said it's important. You might not want to have these discussions, but these discussions are important because again, it's going towards character building. You know, give me 1 second, y'all. 1 second. And to be quite honest, this is what's leading to the genocide that I spoke about the other day. Some of you parents are leading your kids into the crossfires. You know, you're leading them into a dark path that is going to be hard for them to navigate and get back in the right position. Like I said, what's going to happen when your child decides to go out there and do something so irresponsible that they're going to lose a portion of their youth and a portion of their adulthood because of something that didn't need to be done. Again, it's critical and important that you really start, you know, showing something better. How can they be better when you refuse to teach them better? You know, I can remember one summer I had a dude and his family, walking past, and instead of the dude and his woman paying attention to their children and making sure they ain't getting into nothing, I had to kick their children up out of the property because they was trying to quote unquote get something that they could have went somewhere and got it cheap. Like I said, times can't be that hard and you can't be that desperate to take things that you could go buy with the little small money that you do got. That's why I said it's important, you know. And if you really love your children like you say you do, then again, do what's right. Teach them right. Teach them that again, you know, if they don't be weird, if they don't be weary of what they do and how they do things, they can end up putting themselves in a real bad situation. A situation that nobody can get them out of. You can't do nothing if your child decides to do something and becomes the victim of casualty. You know, that's why I said teach them. Make sure you keep away from scenarios, especially street politics. You know, it's another thing that need to be talked about because there should be no reason how your children are being a part of certain situations that again there is no there's nothing positive coming out of that. Again, like prime example, I was speaking on the other day about the brother talking about the drop your flag challenge. Now, again, I'm going to talk about this because I'm looking at the overall message more than anything. But I'm going to also have a little rebuttal with that because I'm from an era where gangsters move in silence. So if you deciding that's the life you're going to live, there are certain things you are supposed to abide by. Like, again, prime example. Right now we see certain things, and this is why I said, and this is an important message to a lot of people who need to hear it. There are some of y'all who are utilizing social media and you utilizing it for all the wrong reasons. And again, you don't know who's watching. Some of y'all promoting some of the destruction as we speak. And again, this is where some of these young ones are getting the notion to say, well, if they doing it, why I can't do it? Again, we came from an era where we didn't know if you was gang banging. We didn't know if you was just a part of street shit, so on and so forth. Why? Because again, kept certain things under wraps. And then the social media wasn't that much of a thing back then. So you would have to visually see that somebody is down with something in order to say, oh, well, okay, well, we know what it is. But nowadays, the people are too blatant, man. Like I said, you got some adults who, like I said, you're an adult. If you're deciding to live that life, whether you in the streets, you got a click, or you down with a major gang. If you're going to use social media, use it for all the right purposes. See, and then some of y'all who are teaching the wrong things, and I'm gonna say it from this standpoint, there's some of y'all who are not just teaching the destruction, you setting yourself up for the kill. Like there's some of y'all right now who will sit here and say, oh, I got wrapped up in this, I got this situation on me because of this. Well, if you wouldn't have came here and made it present, nobody wouldn't have known nothing. You wouldn't be in a situation that you're in now. You can't say that people out here snitching or people out here giving you up and doing this when you're doing it yourself. You know, that's the thing though. I know the internet and social media is for a lot of different things. But the one thing that shouldn't be done is again giving out the wrong information and showing the wrong things. There's some adults who, even if they are gangbanging, you won't know because they're not putting that out there like that. Because they know they got young ones watching, they got other people who are watching. You know, like I said, if you decide you want to move into a certain light, guess what? It shouldn't be forced on you when you're young. That's a decision you should make when you're an adult. Now, I'm not no angel. I ain't no holier than thou person. But in the same token, I just believe in logic and reason. Like I said, if you want to come on here and do what you want to do, then let it be a message behind it. But there are some who have made it clear that they're part of a gang, even if they ain't active. But guess what? They also are bringing out a strong message, and they trying to at least sway and push the youth into other directions. You gotta think about it. In some scenarios, some of these people only came up in the gang life because they didn't have no actual family or real friends or real guidance from anywhere. So when you are in a situation where you're not getting the proper talking, you're not getting the proper guidance, nobody is teaching you anything, and the streets is teaching you everything, what you think you're gonna follow? For real. You know, but again, these are things that shouldn't be forced on children. And I spoke about that recently too. I can remember a point where the gangs wasn't recruiting the kids at all because they always kept that away from them. But nowadays, they're allowing any and everybody. I can remember you had to vet people out to see if they was going to be part of these groups and cliques, if that's how you was going to ride and do whatever. Nowadays, you just allowing anybody as long as they're going to get a job done. You're allowing anybody to be a part of anything if you feel like they're going to be either the scapegoat, the crash out, or the dummy. It's crazy. But again, I can remember a day when even people was doing whatever. Even before the major gangs came out, even in my city, before they came out, we already had gangs. Hence why they had the gangs of New York. That was based on true events and true life. Before Blood, Crip, Yetta, King, all that other shit, you just had regular street gangs that was a part of certain blocks. But see, in a certain instance, they wasn't destroying their community at first. They was mostly doing what they had to do to survive. And a lot of them was only affiliated because, again, when you have no real family structure, what you think you're going to follow? To a normal person who's coming up, or to a young one who's coming up who's young and impressionable, guess what? It looked good to try to get a couple dollars if you could do something and not get caught. You would commit certain acts of crimes and not get caught up in the rapture. Yeah, it seemed good until you get wrapped up. See, these are the things that people don't teach. That again, there are certain instances where your decisions are going to lead to unfortunate consequence. Like prime example, you can be out here thieving, can be out here breaking in homes and doing whatever. But at some point, your ass is going to get caught. And when you get caught, it's not going to be no slap on the wrist, even if this is your first time getting wrapped up. Especially out here. There's some scenarios where they don't give a damn if it's your first time. You will be going to hell upstate, sitting up there for a minute. Even down to our gun laws. It's like I said, and we got the strictest and the harshest of gun laws. That's why there's so much shit going on. That's why even if you just got wrapped up for the first time, no arrest record or nothing, you get caught with that gun and see if you ain't doing that 1.5 to 3. And if you really think your child is going to spend those couple of years locked up, even in the juvenile system, that's still wasting a portion of their livelihood when they could be out here doing so much more. That's why I said it's important for a lot of you adults to start spreading the message the right way. You know, how do we expect them to be better and try to be the future doctors, the future lawyers? Shit, some of them might be future law enforcement. Some of them might go into higher ranks. Some people might get into the medical field, but how are they going to be able to do that when they having this, a consistent arrest record that just ain't going to look good on their overall resume? Like I said, what can one person put on a resume if they trying to get a job, even if it's their first job? What can they put on a resume if all they've been doing or all they know they've been doing was getting locked up back and forth? wasting their childhood or wasting their good years, their teen years, or early portion of their adulthood. What can you put on that resume? Can't put nothing on it. What can you honestly say outside of I was in and out the penitentiary for as long as I can remember? See, and even for those who are utilizing social media for the right reasons, continue to keep pushing that positive message and keep trying to sway the youth away from the things that are going to cause them pain and torture. Real life. You know, there's some of y'all who, even prime example, you don't care what you're doing. You'll sit here, prime example, you'll sit here, roll up a spliff, roll up something, sit right on the camera, face to face with people and doing whatever. Now, again, yeah, you're an adult, but you got to remember, it's not just adults that's watching your content. I don't care what platform you're utilizing. There could be young ones that's coming across the same thing as well. And if they seeing you doing the same exact shit or the same sucker shit that you should have been got up out of, what you think they gonna follow? Why should I listen to anything anybody else is saying when I'm watching a complete adult do the same shit? Ain't gonna work. Son, you gotta realize. See, when I have my ciphers, prime example, you see I don't cam up. There's a reason why I don't cam up. So I want everybody to be clear on that part. There's a reason why I don't cam up as much on it. Because whatever I'm doing, I'm not promoting it. Because I don't know who could be watching it. And I'm not going to be a part of anything. Not going to be a part of, well, we seen him doing this and we seen him doing that. And no. You know, there's some things you're just not going to be able to do. You know? And even if slip up happens at some point, guess what? I'm still in the dope. I'm not promoting it. I'm not promoting it to anybody. You know, like I said, when you're an adult, you make your decisions, you do what you're going to do. But in the same token, make sure the decisions that you decide to make don't have severe consequences. Like I said, we got some who are promoting the destruction, and we got some who are trying to push back the effects of the destruction. Which side do you lie on? That's the question right there. You know, like I said, ain't no holier than thou. It's just logic and reason. And I came from an era where we used a lot of logic and reason. If that's the case, we would have been far worse off than we are now to a degree. A lot of us that was coming around in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, we would be far off worse now than what we seeing in this generation of Gen Z. It probably would have been far more destructive. But again, when you have people who are willing to do what's necessary, especially for the betterment of their family and their children, that says a lot. Like I said, right now it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Some of you don't care where your children are, and that's another thing. I'm going right back to that. Some of y'all don't care where your children are, and that's exactly why some of them are getting lined up for all the wrong shit. And part of my language, because like I said, it's going to be days I'm going to be professional, and there's going to be days that I'm just going to tell it raw and uncut. And right now it's raw and uncut moment because some of y'all need to hear it. You don't give a damn about where your children are. And for some of y'all, you'll say as long as they ain't locked up or as long as they ain't unalive, I don't care what they're doing. But you should care. Because again, this could be a situation where your children lose a portion of themselves to things that are not necessary. And again, to those parents who are actually living up to the standards and still doing what's necessary from the previous generation to now, again, I commend you, applaud you, and keep doing what's necessary. Anything to, again, try to help with breaking some of these cycles that we see, got to start doing that for real. You know, again, Teach your children that there's better ways to come up in the life. You know, you don't have to sell yourself short or put yourself in a critical position just to try to gain some form of momentum in life. Again, I can speak from experience because I taught my brother all he needed to learn from the age of 12 till now. And I did a pretty good damn job doing so. You know, he ain't wrapped up in none of the stuff he don't need to be wrapped up in. He never thought about it. And even when he thought about certain things, came, sat down and talked. And that's the thing. When your children are trying to get information on certain things, you gotta be real with them. Again, when they have a certain age and they have that age of being curious and asking questions, you know, you break down what you need to break down to them. And even when it's uncomfortable talks, still have those talks. But again, also make sure you're doing what's necessary, which means keeping a cool, steady head. Some of y'all like to flip out and wig out. But again, you got to think about it. We all have gone through that process at some point. We have gotten curious about certain things, and we done either asked our moms, our pops, or both. Or we done went and asked the grandparents. Hey, that's a part of life. If it's certain things you know you're going to need to be on board for, get on board with it. Because guess what? If the parents didn't have the talk, the grandparents was having the talk. And then your parents still would have to have the talk. Like, yeah, all right, we did our job. It's about your time now. That's how we keep passing and we keep doing what's necessary. You know, we got to keep preserving. You know, there's a lot of things that should have never changed up, but apparently it changed up. And some of it is due to this social media. You know, it's created an element of surprise in some degrees because, again, where you think most of these young ones are leaning towards? And when you sit here and do a careful observation, prime example, you can see that in some instances, there's some young folks who could be in a group where y'all supposed to be playing, chilling, and doing whatever and socializing. Y'all socializing is more on social media. TikTok videos, all sorts of dance videos, pranks, so on and so forth. Again, they leaning more towards that. And then when you have adults on here, on all these platforms who are just, you're not being self-aware of certain things, guess what? You are still being a part of the genocide, whether you see it or not. Like prime example, there's some of y'all who flossing money and doing all that extra shit. Again, you don't know who watching. It's not so much as you putting a target on your back or you putting yourself in a precarious position. But again, you could be influencing all the wrong things. It ain't hard to see that, again, certain things just, it got to change. You know, because in some instances, again, there's some of y'all who are willing to play the blame game on why certain things are not the way it is. But you're not looking at yourselves when it comes down to, sorry. You know, yeah, there's so many different elements that transpiring before our eyes, right? Y'all don't think it's time for some of y'all to get on board, do what's necessary for you and yours? So you got some people who say, "Oh, it ain't none of your business. Oh, why you worried about this?" If you're not worried about it, then that's a problem. Just like I told my homegirl son the other day. Like I said, what would have happened if your father was in this house and heard you getting crazy with your mom? You think you'd have had that same tone and attitude right now, or you wouldn't be getting up off the ground? Which one? That's why I said it's important. don't matter what situation either side are going through. If y'all got children or got a child together, it doesn't matter. You better get on board, put your shit aside, and focus on the growth of the child. And yes, both have to be prevalent to be a part of that foundational growth. That's the whole fact, serious. You know, like I said, in some instances, you gotta think about it. That's just like if you are moving in the streets. You think you supposed to really be on here saying and doing a whole bunch of shit, whether it's truthful or not? No, you're putting yourself in a precarious position, whether you believe it or not. You will end up being a target of something. And it don't necessarily got to be something violent. You end up putting yourself in a position where you done put yourself behind bars. Why? Because you probably did something that you wasn't supposed to be doing. When you flashing money like that, and even if you gonna say, "Oh, this is how I'm getting my money," why put yourself out there like that? What's that form of flossing supposed to do? Especially again, you don't know who's watching. Co-parenting is essential to establishing a healthy family life. That's a whole fact. And seeing these are the reasons why you gotta have these talks. See, the problem for some of y'all is you won't hear the average Joe Schmo or the regular 9 to 5 say it, but let it be a notable household name or something along those lines, and y'all quick to go behind and say, "Oh yeah, this person said this and this person." He ain't saying nothing that ain't nobody else said. You just wasn't trying to pay attention to the message. You so worried about the messenger, you didn't worry about the message. Yeah, the message is always deeper than anything else, but come on now. Co-parenting is definitely, essential. No matter how you look at it, it is essential. I'm saying this on both instances again. Some of you fellas out there, be careful in what you're doing. Be careful in who you placing your seeds in. Ladies, same thing. Be careful who's planting the seed in you. That's the best advice I could give you to a degree. Whether you got children or not, you better be careful in what you're doing and what you're producing because you are a part of that. And again, on either end, you are a part of that child's growth and development. Riders, baby. Y'all already know if y'all just tuned in, hit the like button. And if y'all new to the channel, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, you gotta have this talk though. You know, it's very important to have these talks. We lose sight of the focus at hand. And the focus at hand is again trying to create better and show better. You know, some people again crying and moping about how certain things in society are, but you are a part of society. So what you do, your decisions that you make, they're gonna calculate for a lot of different things in your life. So if you're deciding you're gonna bring, and I'm speaking to those who don't have children right now or thinking about having children, you gotta make sure that everything is proper. And I mean go by every step and measurement of the book. Start getting back to how the previous generation was. We at least thought before we did. And if we did make a decision, that's because we were stern on that decision and we stood by it. So that's critical to remember too. you're allowing yourself to put your heart out there, you better make sure again you're putting your heart out there for the right people. It's a serious matter now. You know, there's situations where, again, prime example, the jail systems on either end, the juvenile system and the adult system, getting overpopulated. And for every bit of people who are getting out, there's more people coming in. You don't want your offspring to be a part of that. You better get in charge of a lot of things before it becomes dastardly. I'm telling you right now. Like I said, I was aware of things that I need to do, especially within raising my brother after my mom's passing. So again, asking how I know or how I'm, again, talking to a proud guardian and a brother on top of that. That's my blood regardless. So my blood is always going to be good regardless. So that's where you got to stand your ground on a lot of different things. And from what I'm seeing right now, there's some of y'all who are not standing your ground for anything, just falling for the trap. And it's sad because, again, in order to avoid that trap, just got to make careful, executed decisions and make sure that it's not going to cripple or damage you or your family. Like I said, for some of y'all who can't seem to stay out of jail and knowing you got young ones, better start really thinking. Because regardless to what's going on in the world and the current events, there are some things that still can be changed and maneuvered, and you can utilize and prioritize the most important things necessary. Some of y'all just not waking up and getting it because, again, you're allowing everything else to make the decision for you. So talk like this was again needed tonight. Again, the link is pinned in case anybody want to chime in on the convo. I ain't gonna be too crazy. I just definitely want to get that out there. Yeah, some of y'all who again have not learned from previous decisions and mistakes. You're repeating the cycle of genocide again. And the genocide is slowly tearing apart your family. Again, I would say for you young fellas out there, or even some of you older fellas out there, if you know you got offspring that are younger than, you don't want to miss any part or portion of their livelihoods because, again, that's going to rip a fabric between both. You can't build a bond with your family behind them walls. It's impossible. You can't protect and do what's necessary. Your family is at a disadvantage. And if you really care about what you're creating or what you've already created, brothers, get on point. Start really fighting for what's necessary. Make sure if you're going to be out here putting kids in the world, you're doing what's necessary. The most necessary thing you could do is find somebody that's true to you, that's going to be loyal to you, and actually stand on their 10 toes. And when it's all said and done, hey, you create and do what's necessary. Keep the balance going. Keep the life cycle, the family cycle going. But just be happy. Do your damn best. And I would say that too to some of y'all ladies out there. Again, your decisions will impact what happens in your life. If you're not preserving yourself the best way, put yourself in a dire situation. In order for not just the co-parenting or not just the parenting overall, in order for some of those other things to transpire in a positive light, Again, gonna have to do what's necessary. Make sure that person is actually on point with what the main goal is, and the main goal again should just be trying to raise a better individual. I appreciate you, serious baby. But see, like I said, my brother would have been good off regardless. You know, one thing I can say about my family is no matter what, shoot, we always come through when we need to come through. That's the most important thing, more than anything. You know, one thing I would have known anyway. If my mom's was really heavy again on the education and trying to do something better in life. I just had to pick up the slack where she left off with. Like I said, you know, there are some things that people just don't understand. Being a guardian or even just doing what's necessary for your family, that's a given. You know, no matter what part of the battlefield you're on, when it comes down to trying to put either your children or people that you have as your children, your adopted family. Guess what? It's important. You're gonna have to make sure that everything is copacetic. You are the leaders now. You know, and yeah, it wasn't easy. My brother could have turned out on any different level other than what he is right now. To be quite honest, it wasn't just a learning experience for me. It was a proud experience. I can honestly say he had the best of both worlds because before my mom's even thought about passing, she was already instilling the most important things in her, just like she did with me. I just had to pick up the slack where I had to pick up because, yeah, got to be the voice of reason and not just the disciplinary. Nah, I'm gonna have these talks with you, like most parents are supposed to do, like most guardians are supposed to do. Adopted parents, same shit, you know. That's what I'm saying. To watch your young one graduate and actually incorporate themselves in life, yeah, it's a great experience. So for some that might try to run their mouth and say whatever, yeah, you're right. I did what I was supposed to do. Structure, know how to take care of things, and not prone to be emotional. You show emotion when you're supposed to. But no matter what life is throwing you, you don't get too overly emotional and too invested. Logic over reason, logic over emotion. But yeah, definitely want to just get this out here tonight. And I said in some instances, it's time for the buck to stop being passed around. Some of y'all are gonna have to take accountability and responsibility. You know, in order for that cycle to break, you have to really be determined and be serious about protecting the most important thing. If you're gonna create life, you have to be responsible for life, and you have to be accountable for that life as well too. What you teach them, what you instill in them, hey, it's solely up to you. You teach them all right, things will be all right. When you ain't teaching them nothing, don't expect nothing. You know. But I appreciate everybody that tuned in. I appreciate everybody that rocked out. But give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, y'all. But again, part of that destruction and genocide is again not doing what's necessary for you and yours. And again, on both ends, you got to make a conscious decision. Yeah, a lot of things that need to be out the door. And I'm speaking again, those who need to hear. There's a lot of things that should be not even looked at when it's all said and done. Because again, your personal issues have nothing to do with y'all trying to do what's necessary for yours. Sorry. And if you both have a common ground and you able to structure the co-parenting if y'all not together, that's even better. Again, about having that common ground for real. You both have to be on the up and up when it comes down to the growth of your child. If you both are selfish and immature, sorry to say it, it's not going to be a positive outcome. Not unless that child get their own logic of thinking and break the cycle themselves. But again, these type of conversations, some people don't want to have. You know? But hey, at some point, it'll reach the masses the way it's supposed to. But I appreciate everybody that rocked out tonight, though, definitely. Um, for those that were celebrating birthdays this past weekend and celebrating birthdays this week, ain't forget about y'all. Boosie, what's going on? What's going on, my guy? This is what I'm saying, though. And this is something that really shouldn't be taken for granted. Again, your choice decisions in life, when you're not preserving yourself the right way, it will lead to certain consequences. And I've spoken on it on different occasions from different perspectives. Remember that if you're going to be a part of raising life, you have to be responsible in life. At some point, you're going to have to do some mental maturity. Because again, you're supposed to be responsible for that life. And what responsibility or accountability are you showing when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing? If you ain't even doing the bare minimum, so you're going to get his minimum. For real. And again, appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. For those that was in the bushes, y'all already know what it is. Appreciate every last one of y'all. And again, I know y'all be hitting that like button or sharing it, bro. I appreciate every last one of y'all. Yeah, these conversations be uncomfortable and hard to have sometimes because again, they're attacking it from a logical perspective. And some people don't want to hear logics. They would rather hear lies. And again, the lies that you want to listen to are part of that genocide and destruction that we speak about. You know, yeah, you can't save everybody, but you can at least give out the most positive awareness and information to those who might be willing to make that form of change or break whatever cycle. That's why it's important to have these talks no matter what. But yeah, you know, I think in some instances we'll get to at least a more comfortable spot. But again, it's up to the parents to do what's necessary, teach what's necessary, in order for your children to reach what's necessary. Don't let that ball go over your head. Those that know, you know. But I appreciate y'all. I didn't forget about y'all. I know. I did owe y'all a little birthday. I know. I got you. I got you. Yeah, hopefully y'all enjoyed your weekends. I know some of y'all definitely did, especially the nice weather, nice getaways, all of that. Um, for those celebrating this week, same thing. Where you need to be at, blessed to see another one. Give your praises where it's due. Another year, another blessing around the sun, definitely. Another year of wisdom and more growth. But it's time for me to be responsible. I already know what time it is. But I'll definitely be back tomorrow with another good conversation. But hopefully somebody did get something out of this. If I know I reached at least one person, I know I done my job. So that's why you got to keep having these discussions, no matter what the cause. You know, it's awareness the way it's supposed to be. So and again, I appreciate y'all for rocking out. Appreciate everybody that's been a part of the build, still becoming a part of the build. And yeah, we still gonna have these great conversations. These conversations do lead somewhere. And whether you believe it or not, at some point you should get back to a common ground of things. How do we expect better when we refuse to do better? And we refuse to listen to reason at times. Be honest with you. At some point, should be some form of careful decision making for your life. But yeah, you know, I'll definitely be back tomorrow with a great conversation. I might do something a little different. I'll most likely be back early in the afternoon. But yeah, let me get myself up out of here. For those that are just tuning in, y'all could definitely catch this replay. Hopefully, all of y'all enjoy the rest of your evenings. And I see some of y'all running around these streets. I know what it is. You know what it is. Let me get my ass up out of here. If y'all was new to the channel, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Shout out to the replay gang. Shout out to the Shadow Mafia and the Shadow Babies. Y'all know what it is, baby. For everybody that was in attendance tonight, y'all already know that love is love and it'll be reciprocated as such. I don't know how to be fake. All I can do is give you real. That's all I'm going to do is give you real topics and real builds. And yeah. Great conversation as always. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate y'all for just taking the time out. Again, I feel we could get somewhere as long as the conversations are brought and the conversations are consistent. Can get somewhere. You know, can reach higher grounds, but you got to be willing to have these talks, man. Can't be scared to have them either. So, y'all stay safe. Keep that third eye open. Until the next live, we out of here. Peace and blessings.